We're going to take a minute today and talk about an introduction to commercial real estate. Again, I'm Andrew. Welcome to the channel. If you guys are new here, if you have, please like and subscribe. We'd love to have you to come visit the other opportunities, the other options, the great real estate training we offer you guys. I want to do a quick shout out for ENV Title here in Texas. If you're watching this in Texas, you can close with them anywhere in Texas for helping me put this together. My nephew Maramonte is the president there for helping me organize it a little bit. Here's the presentation. So we're going to go over today the basics of commercial real estate. We're going to kind of talk about the difference from commercial and residential and some of the opportunities you can have in commercial real estate. So, of course, what is commercial real estate? You know what it is before you get into it. It's the property used for business purposes to generate income. So that's a very easy definition. Residential, of course, you're living there, it's your primary residence, you're going to move in, it's going to be properties like that. But if you're getting the property for business purposes to generate income, then it can be considered a commercial real estate purchase. So that's an easy way to think of it. Some of the basic ones, that's like retail, obviously, malls, strip malls, standalone stores. Remember that if you have leases, a lot of these offer different revenue sharing type agreements, like triple net lease. We're going to go through leases in a minute and explain the basic difference between the three major ones that are out there. Also, commercials, industrial, warehouses, logistic hubs, manufacturing plants. And usually these are evaluated based on location, accessibility, and zoning. So a good idea to remember that when you get into commercial real estate, it's all about the numbers. Residential, it's all about like, how do I love this house? Can I see my family growing up there? None of that is in commercial. It's about the numbers. Do these numbers make sense to the investor or the buyer, the purchaser? Do these numbers make sense to the business owner in the long term? And we'll get into how to check those numbers quickly as we get into it. All of obviously offices are commercial, class A, B, and C, multifamily apartment complex, mixed use, all those things. So a lot of commercial people will look to buy class B and C apartment complexes or office complexes, fix C and D up to A, and then they flip them and sell them. And that's a big business model for a lot of commercial places, a lot of commercial companies, and they do very well doing that. So that's something to keep in mind. It's an easy way to get into commercial. You find some distressed apartment complexes or business places that need a lot of work. You buy them really low, spend a couple $100,000 cleaning them up, and you can sell them for an extra $1 million. Easy way to get in, clean it up, make it happen. Of course, there's special use hotels, medical buildings, self-storage, parking lots, things like that. Now, a lot of those, as I mentioned, you need to have specialized knowledge for those. You need to understand zoning, all that kind of stuff. So each one of these types, you need different valuation methods and lease structures if they do lease and investment strategies. We're going to talk briefly. This is an intro. Remember, we're not going to dive deep into everything too much. We're going to give you a good overview about all that. Now, as you mentioned before, residential focus on emotional purchasing. Buyers care about schools, neighborhoods, lifestyles, all that kind of stuff. That's what they care about. Commercial is investment driven. You're going to look on your cash flow, your ROI, your return on your investment, your cap rates, your NOI, net operating expenditures, all that kind of stuff. We're going to get over that in a second. All those are more important for commercial. That's what they care about. So again, residential is based on comparable sales, the market comps. That's why if you talk to realtors, like, yeah, I can pull comps on your home. I can see what your CMA, your comparable market value is, or the broker opinion of value, whatever you want to call it. You can check all those. Now, commercial value is valid using a couple different ways, either an income approach, which is your NOI and your cap rates, either a cost approach, and sometimes a market value analysis. It depends on the type of commercial property, would be the type of use of those that you're going to use. It just depends what you're going to look at. Now, the financing difference. Residential, of course, it depends on the credit score, income, debt to income ratio, all those things. The DTI, that's all for residential. Commercial, when you get income for that, it depends on the property income, the financials, the Schedule C, Schedule E's, all those type of things that come in, all the other fancy schedule and letters that come in that show the income, how much they make, what it costs them to run the properties, all their deep down paperwork, all those financials. And then the debt service coverage ratio, your DSCR. So how much money, how much debt does this building have? How much money are you going to make to offset that debt? All those type of things can come into. This gets very, as you can see, it gets a little more complicated in commercial, a lot more than residential. So you really need to know what you're doing when you get into that. Now the sales cycle, residential, 30, 60 days. You want to close hopefully within a month or two. Commercial can take up to 90 to 180 days. So commercial, you have to be patient. It can take longer. And you have much more due diligence and much more extensive in commercial real estate. You got to understand zoning laws, lease agreements, NOI analysis, all that kind of stuff. All that's really important. So we're going to look at different type of leases. Here are the three type of leases we're going to talk about. Triple net, gross lease, and modified. Make it very simple for you guys. Triple net, the tenant pays for the property expenses, including property tax, insurance, and maintenance. Okay, in addition to the rent. The landlord has minimal expenses and they receive mostly passive income. So the landlord doesn't have to worry about anything. The tenant pays for everything. This is great for retail spaces, industrial, office buildings, and long-term tenants. And this is great for large companies that want more control over the property, such as Walmart, Amazon, Starbucks. They want to know what they're paying. They want to, have very much control. They don't want to just let the landlord do everything. The triple net lease is the tenant pays for everything. They take care of everything. A good example is a Walmart store. See right here, Walmart pays rent, property tax, insurance, maintenance costs, almost like PITI for residential. The landlord only collects rent. They don't deal with anything else on the property. And why do investors like this triple net, and then lease, triple net lease is the landlord gets steady income with no management responsibilities. So for the pros and cons for triple net lease, the pros, low risk, consistent passive income, and minimal involvement. You just get your check, you're happy. The cons, it's higher expense and more responsible. You have more responsibilities for maintenance and repair because you're still the owner of the property. So if something breaks, you still have to pay for it out of pocket. If the AC goes out, you're replacing it. That's not including the triple net lease. So you may have higher expense and you have more responsibility than other leases. Now, the next one you can get into is the gross lease. On this one, the landlord pays for all property expenses. Remember, triple net, the tenant pays. On this one, the landlord pays, including tax, insurance, and maintenance. The tenant just pays a very fixed, simple payment. You're going to say your rent is $5,000 a month. That's it. You don't have to pay for anything else. You don't have to worry about anything. Everything's included. You just pay your $5,000 a month and you're done. It's great for co-working spaces, office spaces, retail properties. This is best for smaller companies. I always meant, smaller businesses that are getting out there that want to know exactly a fixed cost. They have more of a tight budget, not like an Amazon, a Walgreens, something that has millions of dollars. We want to be more in control. This is for, as you mentioned, office spaces, smaller properties usually, or some more smaller retail properties. This is great because you have very predictable, exactly every month what your rent's going to be. You don't have to worry about it. An example, a small law firm wants to downtown high rise under a gross lease. They want to pay $500 a month in rent, and that's it, or $5,000 a month in rent, and that covers everything. And then the landlord takes care of everything else in the property. So the pros is predictable rent for the tenant. There's no unexpected cost. You know exactly what you're paying. And the bad part, the con for the landlord, is they cover everything. Even if there's, say, they have 4 AC units in the building, they all go out, that could be 3,000 to 4,000 per AC unit. That's 20 grand the landlord has to come up with to fix those. All that is covered, even if the costs rise unexpectedly, the tenant stays the same price. So this is, like I said, this is good for people where the tenant doesn't want to deal with anything, just pay for it. And then you have the modified gross lease. So you have the triple net, the gross lease, and then the modified. This is a mixture between the two we talked about before. The tenant and the landlord are going to share the property expenses. Okay, so typically the tenant pays the base rent, some operating costs, while the landlord covers the major expenses. Of course, you negotiate the exact split. The tenant pays utility, landlord, etc. This is good for office building, medical offices, industrial spaces. This is tenants and landlords who want to split expenses fairly. It just depends on the business model that your client wants to go through. A good example is a startup, 2,000 square foot under a modified gross lease. The startup pays base rent and utilities and janitorial, and the landlord pays property taxes, insurance, and exterior maintenance. So this way, if it's like a bigger property that has an outside maintenance, like this one example, a tech startup would have outside lawns, things like that. They might not want to deal with that. They might want the landlord, sorry, to take care of all that. They want to worry about what's inside the walls so they can get their company moving. And then they don't have to worry about it with this modified gross lease. The tenant can take care of the outside. This is good for both, where it's customizable. It allows negotiation of cost sharing. But the cons for the tenant, you don't know what you're going to be spending all the time, depending what you're covering. And then for the landlord, you're still responsible for some as well. So as you can see, all of these have some positive and negatives. And here's a nice little table for you to look at the three major lease types out there and kind of what it covers and help you understand which area is going to be covered best and what might fit your client's needs. So that's a great way to kind of look at it that way. Now, when you look at a commercial deal, you need to know the net operating expense. The NOI is what they call it. It's your total revenue operating expense. It's a very simple formula. We're going to get into this and the cap rate, so don't worry about the formulas. We'll get into in a minute. We're going to start first with the net operating expense, or NOI. And this is your income your property makes or generates after operating expenses, but before taxes and financing expenses. Very simple to calculate. It's the total revenue minus the operating expense. So a lot of people say, why do I need to know this? Of course, you need to know a property's profitability. And this is needed. You need this number to calculate the cap rate and property value and such. And this helps investors kind of understand what's my cash flow before all my financing and everything else happens. So they just want to know. So if someone reaches out, hey, what's my NOI on that? If you ask the client that, or a new investor, something like that, hey, this is a good property, what's the NOI? If they're like, I don't know, let me figure it out, then that's probably not a person you want to work with, because they don't understand, they don't have their numbers ready, they're not prepared. That gives you an idea then of kind of what to pay attention for. Very simple example. You have a big apartment complex rental, you make 200,000 a year or 200,000 a month. Your operating expenses is 50,000. Your NOI is 150,000. That's that simple. You just subtract the rental income from the operating expense, or whatever the income is from the operating expense, and then you have your NOI, 150. Very simple. Now, the cap rate is much more important for a lot of people. They want to definitely know the cap rate. So this is based on a rate and a return an investor expects to make on a property based on its income is your cap rate. So the cap formula is the NOI divided by the property value times 100, because it's supposed to be given as a percent. That's why it's times 100. So a higher cap rate is a higher risk, but also a higher return, which is very interesting. A lower cap rate is a low risk, but a lower return. So you need to ask your commercial clients, what is what are you willing to get into? What's your danger, whatever you want to call it? How dangerous do you want to be? Do you like to live dangerously? And then you want a higher cap rate. If not, you want a lower cap rate. So you kind of have to think, what is your threshold? Where are you at? Where do you want to be? What is your income? Where is your cap rate income limit? Where do you want to be at? Most investors know exactly where they are in different markets, have a different cap rate. I was in Laredo training, helping a real commercial real estate group there. They said in Laredo, their cap rate is much closer to 10%, 8 to 10%. They have a higher risk there, but they have a higher return, and their investors are willing to get a higher return with a higher risk. In San Antonio, like they were talking there, here closer to San Antonio, is closer to a 4 to 5 in the area when we're looking at. So that's almost a double cap rate when you go to Laredo, Texas instead of San Antonio. But the investors there, they're much more willing to take the kind of a higher risk because they get a better return. And that's the way it is there. That's their cap rate. They have to understand. So that way, when you talk to your investors, you got to say, what's your risk aversion? Is what you can call it the fancy term, if you want to kind of say, do you have a high risk aversion or a low risk aversion? What do you want to look at? If they're okay taking a risk and putting their money, you can have a higher cap rate. If not, you want a lower one so they don't walk away and lose them. Okay, an example, property with 100,000 NOI and purchase for 1 million. This is very simple, of course, math. You get 100,000 divided by 1 million times 100, and that equals 10%. So again, half rates help you know it. So we'll go overview. So 10% is that some people would say that's a decent cap rate. Some want to be closer to 4 or 5, depending on your market. So in Laredo, that would probably be acceptable. San Antonio, you'd probably lose half of your investors. They don't want to go that high. So it just depends what their risk aversion is. So again, cap rates help you compare different commercial properties. The higher the cap rate means a higher potential return, but also more risk. So like we mentioned right there, what is your risk tolerance for the investor? How much do they want to live dangerously? What's your risk tolerance? You want to be able to make it work that way. So again, cap rate, performance metric for comparing commercial properties. NOI is the actual income before financing and taxes. They work together. Most investors will ask you for the NOI and the cap rate. So if you're going to understand this, like it says, the final thoughts, understand these metrics is very important. If you're going to be presenting this or talking to investors, if you can just advertise, if you want more leads, you could say what? Oh, let me show you the NOI and cap rate on this property. Or say this commercial property has NOI of this and a cap rate of this. We're looking for investors who want to get involved with this property. They're like, oh, cool, let's go. And then they know exactly what their risk aversion is up front. So it's important to be able to do that simple math and to get into it. Now we're going to talk about finding commercial deals and some easy comps, some of the basics again. So it's if you look at commercial deals to find them, you can look at LoopNet, CoStar, Crexi. A lot of these is like the big, almost like the MLS for residential. They fill them up there, and of course, just like a lot of sellers on the MLS, these can be overpriced because people know a lot of people will you get different more offers, things like that. So it does give you opportunities there to find different deals, but at the same time, sometimes they're a little bit overpriced. You can look for off-market deals, which is you're reaching out directly to different companies, different things. If you see a distressed commercial property, you can reach out directly to the owner or the company and say you're looking at selling or getting another owner to take over responsibility for that property. You can do things like that. If you know other commercial brokers, it's a good way to connect with other commercial brokers that way. And then also network with investors. If you're not part of an investor group, you need to join one of those, like not only like a BNI, but an actual investor group where you can get into that. And then local resources, tax records, city planning documents, economic development. Like we have a thing at E&V Title called Title Pro. Here they have that they can offer to clients, and that can pull anywhere in the United States to pull distressed properties, foreclosure, tax rates, all that. If you bring business to us, we can take care of you that way. Adjusting commercial comps, you have to understand or consider lease terms, tenant strength, property age, location. As you can see, all these variables come in when you look at commercial property. Much more complicated than just basic residential. And they can, as the last sentence says, commercial properties can vary greatly in valuation based on rent roll stats and future potential. Now, we helped you, I know a lot of clients, I talked to a lot of commercial clients, they said, we want to know some easy ways to help us get like comps, affordability, things like that. So in this Google Drive sheet, I have linked in this is a Google Drive sheet. I'm going to link it in the YouTube video at the bottom. This, as you can see, each tab has a different breakdown of different type of properties, commercial and such. This gives you a rough idea. It's not perfect yet, so I know you're going to say, oh, I see a mistake. That's great. Tell me a mistake if you see it. I'll fix it. We're still adjusting this with some other commercial brokers are helping me put this together a little bit nicer. So we're cleaning it up right now, but it will be a live document. As we clean it up, it's going to update automatically on the Google Drive. Remember, you can't write on mine. You have to go to the top left, click File, make a copy, and then you can write on yours. And you can put some ideas. You can send it to me again if you clean it up, and I can add it to the same area and maybe put your link in there as well. Please help each other out with the commercial. I know it's a lot more complicated for new agents. We're trying to get a little database here to help out some new agents to be able to find the next thing. Okay, let's make sure we're here. Okay. So we're going to just look, for example, real quick. This is just a basic case study thing if you were going to go over that. Converting an office building into a multi-family property. So a lot of office buildings, if they have a high vacancy, investors are turning them into office spaces or apartments. So they're taking these office buildings, office spaces, converting them into apartment buildings. So again, zoning, you have to know zoning rules, you got to know build out, financing hurdles, things like that. And you have to understand the financials, assessing current versus future NOI and the cap rates post-conversion. And then, have you ever worked on these? What were your deals? That's just a little chat if you're in the actual live training we're doing. Now, if you're transitioning, as we mentioned, this is intro to commercial. If you're transitioning from residential to commercial, you're going to need some really good skills. You're going to need some market research, some financing analysis, and some lease negotiation skills. If you don't have these skills, or you don't think you do, or you want to learn, you need to get with a mentor and have that work to help someone to help you out. You need to focus on investors, business owners, developers, target industries that are growing, like industrial, multifamily, healthcare. If you haven't noticed, every corner now, you see building little 24-hour emergency rooms all over the place. Little drop-in urgent care rooms. The cost is cheaper for people who don't have health care. They can pay a couple $100 without having to go to the emergency room if they get sick. It's turning into a big industry now to have these little urgent care spots, whatever you want to call them, emergency urgent care all over the place. That's a good thing to get into. You can help people find property, that zone, get commercial, help develop it. You get a lease in there, you get paid for all that. And then again, if you want to work with a commercial broker, which I highly recommend finding a good one, they have a higher deal volume, access to exclusive listings, and then mentorship from CE professionals such as myself. Now, another call to action, your next steps, you need your education. If you really want to get good, CCIM is like the main biggest one. It's almost like going to college again. It's very intense. It takes some people a year to get through all the classes. If you really want to get into commercial and look like you know really what you're doing, if you have this certificate, again, remember, commercial doesn't care about emotions. They're going to say, "Are you CCI certified?" "No, I'm not." "Okay, thank you. I have a broker that is. Have a good day." And they'll go. A lot of people like that. You can have your SOAR, your NAR certification, commercial cert. At least take the NAR commercial cert if you want to get into commercial. That'll help you understand it. Attend some networking events, commercial real estate groups, join investment groups, all those kind of groups to kind of get yourself and get you around other commercial agents. And as I mentioned before, partner with experienced commercial agents to gain firsthand experience. You need that. Prospecting, start targeting business owners, investors, landlord, developers. Commercial, you have to be more hands-on. Residential, you can post some ads, you can do some YouTube stuff, you can do a cute dance on TikTok, whatever the hell you want to do. You can do that all for your residential. Commercial, you can't do it. You're gonna have to hit the ground. You're gonna have to make some uncomfortable calls. And remember, you're talking to investment professionals, so they're going to be short. They're going to be like, "Okay, what's your NOI? What's my cap rate? How's it working?" You're going to have a thick skin. That doesn't work. "Thank you. Have a good day. Bye." And they're going to hang up and move to the next one. So you're going to have a thick skin. You're going to have a different mindset. You're now a professional. You're not an HGTV anymore. Now you're out there doing the real work. So that's what you're going to have to think about when you do that. If the E&V title commercial specialist, this is my information here, but this one here is Nefi Naramontes. He's in the president of E&V title. He's like the #1 commercial title rep in all of San Antonio. So feel free to reach out to him if you have any issues about commercial. Send him an email. He's hard to reach all the time. Text him or email him is better. He can help you close any commercial deal easily in the state of Texas. He knows all the lawyers, all the commercial people. He can help you deal with any issues that you're having and take care of and make sure they're done correctly. Hope you all enjoyed it. Please leave any feedback of how to make it better, and we'll talk to you soon.